Welcome to the Brickworks Podcast, an extension of the studio based here in Burnham-on-sea. Our aim for this podcast is to have a completely open forum for conversation. This could be about art, life, mental health, or even how the world is burning down around us right now. Whether you're listening to this whilst on a run or relaxing at home, we hope you enjoy our mild-mannered rambles. Thank you. Yeah, man. It's good to have you. It's good to catch up, actually, to be honest with you, because it's weird because we were just saying it was like a month ago that we last saw each other, but it legitimately feels like 3 years ago.
We've both just been so busy with like you doing this and me doing my own work, and it's nice to finally catch up.
Mate, I know, it's really strange, isn't it? I think it's so easy to just like get caught up in the bullshit of living sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and the fact that one lockdown to another.
Yeah, Hey Google, stop. Just realised music's still playing. Apologies to everyone listening or watching this podcast. We're still recording, but hey ho.
It's a beautiful thing.
That's what happens when you're new to the podcast game. But yeah, no, it's weird because like I was saying this to Gabrielle, actually, who was on the first episode of the podcast. I was saying to him, I was like, it honestly felt like I hadn't seen him in a year, but it was literally like 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? The fact that I think this lockdown, second lockdown, it feels like I've just been completely separated from the world. In the fact that the first one, it was okay because I could still go out on my daily walk, and you still can. But it's just, I think getting through the first one was okay because you were like, oh, this is fine, I'll get through it. But now you're in another one, another lockdown. It's just like, it's completely draining.
Yeah. I think I was talking to my mother about this actually the other day. I think the difference is like the first lockdown, it felt like we were all in it together. Like there was all like the clapping for the NHS, all of those things. It was like we were all in this like shit situation together to try and get through it together. Whereas this one, because life has felt pretty normal, you know, for different people it's been different, of course, but for me it's felt fairly normal. So the thing that I've really noticed is that feeling of like togetherness and the feeling of, you know, banding together to get through this is like completely gone out the window.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The fact that as well, I think my motivation has dropped. Well, not my motivation as in going about my day-to-day life and work. I just feel like my motivation to try and like work out a way of doing something, it's just like it's just that like mental like frustration of I'm in a lockdown, like what, I can't do this, I can't do that. I'm constantly having to check like, is this okay to do that? And I know there's people that are like obviously not following the rules, that's your choice, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Of course.
But I think I would rather not put someone else's life in jeopardy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's definitely different when we've got sort of elderly relatives as well. You know, it sounds really strange to say, but I'm lucky enough to not have any sort of elderly relatives around, you know, within a close proximity to me anymore. And so I suppose there's a level of like lenience that I can get away with in a way. Yeah,
well, that's funny. My relatives are 20 minutes each way from me. So knowing the fact that I'm literally separated by a river in terms of what tier I'm in. And I know that my nan's over there. She's in tier 2. I could literally walk to my nan's house, but I can't see her. And it's just like crazy. The fact that I know that it's just the fact that you can't see them. That's the frustration for me. And it's completely put a halt to anything like creative that I'm doing because my whole projects were focused on her, and I'm now like I can go and shoot right now. But then knowing that I can't shoot, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Like,
it completely drains you as well.
Yeah, totally. And I think like creatively, like this whole lockdown has either gone one way or t'other for people. I think the first lockdown, you know, I don't know if you would agree, but like the first lockdown, I found like a new importance in the creativity that, you know, the projects I was making with Lost Holiday and all of those things. But this second time around with the studio, my creativity is nowhere near as high as it once was.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. Like I think, for me, I'm in kind of a unique position in that, like, the studio is my full-time job, like running the Brickworks, trying to make it become something, because that's what, you know, me and George want from this, definitely. But it's also it's a creative space, but it's hard to be creative when you're worrying you're worrying about emails and, you know, trying to get the next artist, etc. So it's quite unique for me in that regards, but I know that other creatives, you know, that have really suffered this time around.
Yeah, and I think the first lockdown, I think it must have been the first lockdown, or just as we're going into it or coming out of it, we had the other podcast, you know.
Yeah.
And I was just coming to the end of my degree. So I had something to work towards, I still have things to work towards. Like, I'm doing stuff for Audi now as a photographer, corporate stuff, and that's great. Like, don't get me wrong, but my personal projects that I do on my own, like, accord, is just, I wanted to take a break, and I needed a break because at uni I was shooting projects to please people and get boxes ticked. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what you do, isn't it? You get your degree, but I wasn't creating work that I've thought, I'm going to create this project to put in an exhibition, or I'm going to create this project to go and show to someone. I was just creating work for the sake of creating work with not having an end goal.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing. Is like, especially coming out the other side of a degree. Yeah. I honestly forgot that you finished your degree. I forgot that I finished my master's this year as well. But yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I think that's quite the debate, isn't it? Like, I've had that sort of conversation with a lot of photographers that have studied, whether it's a BA or MA or whatever level, that when you're studying a creative subject, it becomes this kind of need to make to please, in a way. Like, you're almost making to please the exam board.
That you constantly, you finish one project and you have to go straight into the next one.
Yeah, especially at like a BA level.
And you don't get time to, you get a few weeks there to think about what you want to do, but you don't have enough time to seriously consider what you want to do. So I would always go in from one project, it would be great, and the next one semi-okay, but my mind would be clouded in the fact that, what am I shooting now? I have to think quickly. And I was always my second year, I was always going to do stuff that I knew that I could easily do and easily complete. And then my third year, I was like, look, if I really want to make a success of this, I've got to push my comfort zones. So I was shooting people that I didn't know. I was going to do subjects or photograph subjects that I wouldn't have ever photographed in my second year.
Really?
No.
That's really interesting that you found that switch going from second to third year. I think a lot of people that are studying any sort of art form, the third year is actually the year that you kind of really find what you're making, I think I knew what I was making. Okay. But I was kind of, it sounds bad, in the first year I knew that it didn't count at all. So I was literally just doing projects just to, like, it's just, you know, to hit the marketing market criteria.
Second year I was kind of went back into uni, and I was thinking second year blues, and I just had no motivation. Well, I had motivation because I'm a motivated person. I like to get things done, but in an aspect that I was going in there and I knew that I still had another year to go. So I was just like, this is great. And the fact that we met each other, so that kind of, it was nice that I had people I could just go out and see outside of uni. But then third year I was like, I'll step up my game here. Totally. And alongside my dissertation as well, it was nice just to shoot, knowing that I'm coming out at the end of uni. And I can go off and just do what I want. So I was putting all my time into my projects then. Yeah, no, because I remember, because we met, it's really strange actually, wasn't it? I think because we had met previous to us actually meeting. I know that sounds really strange, but so when did we actually meet? It was what, 2019, early 2009? No, 18. Yeah, I think it was late 2018. But for some reason, I'd always known you from somewhere. You know, like when you know somebody, when you know somebody, but you don't know where from. I'd always felt. I remember, and it's really weird, and it's not weird. Well, it is a bit. I remember you were on the film course, or you had just done some film.
Shit, was it UCW? I was sat in the
same room as you, but I'd never spoken to you. Yeah, and I'd always passed you in a corridor.
Yeah.
And then. For some, I think I came home on Christmas from uni, and I was like, does anyone want to like hook up and shoot and just do a few portrait shoots? And then you messaged me.
Yeah, I remember
you were like,
now.
Yeah, I'll be down. So then we kind of just did that.
Yeah. Because I remember, because that was when I was like doing the day, like I was fully into like the daily story, like because I remember we were walking around Weston and I set my phone up on like a really sketchy bin and I was like, here's Mike, like on my Instagram story. Fuck man, that's crazy, because that's probably where I remember you from, was from UCW actually, because I used to spend a lot of time, even after finishing my like BA honours there, because I was still working.
You round.
Yeah, I was still working with like the film degree. I was still working with like Seb and Poppy and all those people that were still studying. Like we were shooting, I can't remember, we were shooting multiple films at one point. Fuck man, that's crazy. But yeah, I don't think we really sort of connected until I moved to Cheltenham and started my masters, which I think I've said this to you before, but the reason why I did that was because of the conversation that I had with you, like 3 weeks before applying, 2 weeks before I applied for it. Like it was crazy actually. I didn't think about this the other day, but I was looking at doing my masters for like the whole of 2018. And I had gone to multiple unis, primarily in London, like, because I was like, okay, I'm going to have to go to London if I want to work, as a documentary photographer. Like, I need to be in that city or whatever. And then I met you and we started talking about UOG, University of Gloucestershire.
I was like, why are you going to London?
Yeah, you were like, why go to UAL, come to UOG? And I was like, what the fuck is UOG? And so I started looking at it and then saw the master's degree. I went up there and had a chat with Julia. God, I remember Julia.
She's a lovely lady.
Yeah, deep down she was. She was fucking intense though, as a lecturer. Anyways, I remember having a chat with her, talking about the master's degree, etc. And then literally being offered a place on that day. She was like, "Do you want a place?" I was like, "Let me think about it." Accepting it 3 days later, and then moving to Cheltenham 8 days later. Literally crazy, right? That fast from us having a conversation. From that 3 weeks later, I was living in Cheltenham.
On the road, bro.
Mate, literally, it was crazy because I thought about that literally the other day. I was like, fuck me, that was an impulsive decision. But it came from our conversation. You know what I mean? Like our conversation, and I think it was like coffee one or whatever.
I don't speak much, but when I speak, I speak.
Speak facts.
No, it's not like I left UCW and I was like, got my degree, and I think we spoke about this last time, and I was like, realistically, is there anywhere I can go with a degree from Western?
Well, it's a good question to ask,
No, I couldn't, is the honest opinion. Because it doesn't carry that much.
I think it depends what your goal is. I think if your goal is just to learn technical aspects of an art form, whether it's photography, fine art, whatever, UCW and sort of the college uni collaboration, which UCW is,
great.
It's a great place to be. But if you're trying to build like really strong links into industries, is it the best place? No. Is it fairly inexpensive? But you've got to weigh up those two options.
Because I originally was going to go to Falmouth. I don't know if I've ever told you.
Yeah, I think I remember you saying.
I think it was the night before I was going to go down on the day to move into the accommodation. And I was like, you know what, I just got a feeling that it wasn't for me.
Interesting.
And then I look back now and I think I wouldn't have done half the stuff I've done now if I'd have gone there. Because I was looking at it in the way that, yes, it's a great uni. Yes, people get really good like prospects out of going there. But I was thinking, why do I want to stick myself in Cornwall? There's not really an art scene in Cornwall.
No.
And
well, I think there is, but it's quite niche.
It's very niche.
It's very small.
And I thought, I'm going to be competing against 80 people in the class. And at the time, I was thinking, I would rather go to a uni that I know I can get that time to show someone my work and then work on what I want, like their feedback and critique. And I remember the one thing that stood out from going to Falmouth, and I'm not slating it because it was a great uni. The teachers, the lecturers were great. They were really nice. But the fact that you only saw that your tutor every 3 months. I was like, there's no way I'm going to improve myself as an artist.
Every 3 months.
Every 3 months. I want to improve myself every week, every day. And how can I how can I work on a project that's due in a few months and only see them once? You know?
No, I agree. I think that's half the battle though, isn't it? With like uni degrees, college, it's like, if you know, the biggest learning experience I had was going from a BA, having a year off and working in the film industry and doing all of that stuff, and then going into a master's, because I thought that the master's was going to be like the BA, lots of like constructive time with my lecturers, etc. But it was not. And so the first like 3 months was really weird for me, because I can work independently, especially now. But when I first started, I constantly wanted reassurance from my lecturers or whomever was in my, you know, my educational bubble. And so that was a weird like thing to understand.
It's hard,
and learn.
isn't it? Especially when you've been comfortable. I think I was comfortable in the fact that when I was at Western, I could just go and see my tutors. All the time.
Yeah, because the office was literally down the road. Yeah.
And then going from that to then UOG, I think it was best thing for me. I've done so many things now. I'm not being cocky, but I would say I've established myself as a pretty
you've developed a lot as an artist
now.
Yeah, massively.
And the fact that people know me, not in a cocky way, like I don't brag about it, but
no, people understand what you make, you know, and I think that's all we can ask for as artists.
I wouldn't have done that if I'd have gone to Falmouth, because I would have felt so like claustrophobic almost. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't have been able to be as individual as I could have been.
I think that's the thing with like a university like Falmouth, because you are almost pushed down to the coastline. You're right down there. There is a level of isolation, I suppose, that comes with that. I obviously I don't know, because I've never studied there, but people whom I've spoke to that have, you know, I've heard of some horror stories of that kind of university as such. I think the thing, I don't know if you'd agree, but I got into quite a somewhat heated, not heated, but a bit of a debate with a friend of mine.
Sorry.
Do you want to move the mic a little bit closer? With a friend of mine, and we were talking about how having a degree in the art world can almost be pointless. And I argued that it can be pointless in a context of if you're not utilizing what you've learned. If you go into that and you treat it with no respect, like the degree with no respect and what you can learn, you're not going to fully fulfill what you could get from it.
Yeah, I agree. I think you either, it sounds bad, but I think you either do a degree to like get something out of it, or I think some people sometimes take it as an easy road.
Yeah,
so
especially art degrees.
I wasn't just going to do a photography degree because I had no other idea of what I wanted to do. Like, I knew that I wanted to be a photographer full time. Yeah. So I was going to utilise that degree.
Yeah.
I wasn't just doing it because I came out of school and college and think, what am I going to do, you know? I think it was nice to know that that's what I want to do. And that's the only thing I was focused on.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, I think there's almost a stigma around art degrees that they're easy. You know, and I think, okay, in some contexts, they are, but in other contexts, they are ridiculoly difficult because of what you've got to learn, you know, to actually hit the criteria of things.
I was so shocked that I was able to do a dissertation, to be honest.
Honestly, same.
I was trying to find, I remember when I was looking for a course where I didn't have to do a dissertation and I could just do a project. Yeah. And I was like, oh no. And I remember looking at the credentials for UOG and I was like, there's no dissertation here. Brilliant. And then I remember coming into the first year and it was a day, I think it was a few days in, and they're like, this is what you're doing first, second and third. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to have to do a dissertation. And I was like, oh no. But it is what it is, you know. I think if I didn't do it, I would have not had that sense of accomplishment that I have done it.
I think there'd be a level of regret as well, because there's so much you learn about yourself in that, like writing 10,000 words or whatever. You know, I know that, speaking from personal experience, you know, doing Treasure Island on my masters and writing like 172,000 words for the blog, I was like. Now, when I tried to read back through the blog the other day, just as like an exercise to see if my approach to the work would change, and I got like 5,000 words into it. I was like, fuck.
It's funny you say that though, because that's the one thing that I have kept doing since uni. I've kept a blog.
That's good.
And I've kept a blog to keep myself active, even though I'm not shooting.
Yeah.
I've stopped shooting for a while now. I'm only shooting commercially. But, well, with my new job when I start it, I'll be shooting commercially, but I don't want to do any documentary stuff for quite a while. So I just want to have a break from it. But I've kept a blog to keep myself active and keep moving with the times. I guess it's probably changed since I last looked at it, you know. It always is developing.
Yeah, totally.
So it's nice to keep like researching. I always find new photographers to look up. I'm watching more films now.
Interesting.
Just for the vision, not like films for the way they're lit, the lighting, the colours, the way that people are posed within a frame, you know. And I've found way more interest in that. Yeah. And I think that's the way I'm probably going to go. To start looking at portraiture.
Okay, that's really interesting. You're finding,
really, I never thought that, and I never thought it at uni. No,
because the film world is so like closely correlated to photography. You know, obviously being a lens-based media.
Really got into on Netflix the recent The Crown.
Yeah, the Crown, the cinematography in The Crown is beautiful. And that's
what I've started to watch, and I'm thinking the cinematography is beautiful. The way that people are posed in the photo is beautiful, the light's beautiful, and that's what I'm trying to kind of take inspiration from that now.
That's really strange, because that's exactly how I started getting into the film stuff was through, you know, having a bit of a break from photography. I decided to take a break, and I was like, after my BA, I decided to take a break from making projects and all those things, and that's when I fell into doing cinematography for different films, etc.
I think that's it. I wanted to find a new way of approaching it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I'd always approached it from one angle, and I'd never kind of gone at it from another way. If that makes sense.
Yeah, a little bit. Do you want to move your mic a little bit again?
Okay.
If you just move it across, so that's perfect.
So yeah. That's the way I've gone so far, and I'm looking at it in the way that when I do pick up my work again, I can kind of approach it in a different way. Not trying to completely change my style, because I don't want to do that, but kind of adding new aspects and trying to push myself a bit more.
Do you think I started thinking of creativity like layers? Not to use a Shrek reference, but but like I think creativity has so many layers in ourselves. Like you know. I know that for me personally, I pull creative input from many different sources, whether it's from literature, from poetry, from, you know, visual elements like film, obviously photography, painting. Like it's all of these layers I found that then sort of create how I see the world as a creative, because we all see it from different perspectives. Like I might walk down the street and think the way the street is lit to be really really visually interesting, whereas somebody else might walk down the street and think it's visually boring. And I find that very interesting.
No, I agree. I think that's the thing that I've been starved of as well, is the fact that I can't have someone to bounce my work off at the moment.
Of course.
Well, I can online, but I'd rather physically show my work.
Yeah, like proper sit down
just
and
chuck a few prints out on a table. And I think that's the other thing that's really annoyed me with lockdown.
Yeah, I think that's probably, I don't know if you'd agree, but one of the most important things to do as a photographer is to actually physically print your work. Yeah. Like I neglected that for so many years, and then starting my masters and realizing how much people were printing their work on that, because, you know, working around, I think I was one of the youngest on my course. You know, I'm only 25 or 24 when I started my masters. Yeah, bro, I feel old some days. And then, you know, working around people that were, you know, 40, 45, 50, who've worked as photographers for the better part of 2 decades, and they're printing out their work constantly and making contact sheets and all of these things. And I'm like, I need to be doing this more. Like, this is a great way of looking at your work. Because it's so easy to fall into put it on Lightroom, edit the ones you like, export them. Oh, I'll put them on Instagram.
And in a digital age, you almost subconsciously fall into that.
Totally.
Because you're always shooting on a digital platform. You upload to a digital platform, and then you're just stuck in that constant mindset of, I'm viewing a photo on my laptop. Why do I need it? It looks great, you know?
Yeah.
But it changes the way you look at your work if you print it out, because you can put a photo next to a photo. That's a double page. Single page, double page.
I think it also changes the way that the viewer, i.e. yourself, looks at it. I think that looking at on, you know, a 1080p or whatever screen, it's great because the detail's fantastic, etc. But when it comes to actually printing and printing like a nice quality print, like I'm lucky enough that I have a nice photo printer now. You know, I can print up to A3 full bleed, like quite high quality prints if I wanted to. And I've noticed that ever since I got that printer, I try to do that at least once or twice when I'm making any series of work.
I agree.
Because by printing it, you're taking it from this, you know, 15-inch, 17-inch, whatever display you're using on your laptop or computer, and you're putting it into maybe an A4, what you might actually display a 10x8, whatever. And you see the composition differently. You see the lighting different. You see like maybe areas that the story is being told that you didn't even
realize. When you look at it on a screen, you can't put an image next to an image.
No, not easily.
You're always
anyways.
looking at one image, and then you have to flick to the next. When you have it on a wall, 2 images, 1 image, and you know where you want to put it. And I think that's what I've really... And then I can work out, that composition works with that composition. The colour works with that colour. You can put reds to reds, greens to greens, browns to browns, blacks to blacks. And you can just go for it.
Are you like a... it's a quote that I pulled from Alex Soth, actually. It's like, whether you're a book photographer or a gallery, like exhibition photographer, I think...
What do you think?
I think you're a book photographer, personally. I don't think you shoot for exhibitions. I think your work is definitely aimed at long form storytelling through a book, through pages. And I think you can see that in certain photographers. I had this conversation with George actually the other day. And this is
excuse me, sorry, I just...
Nah, man, that's all good.
Not COVID.
We're 2 meters apart, it's fine. I had this conversation with George the other day, and I was saying, like, and this is no disrespect to any of the people that do this, but there's some photographers that are fantastic at making single images, or like 1 or 2 images together, and they look great. The one I think of is Burnham Lighthouse. There's a lot of photographers that I know, locally or whatever, that can come here and make a fantastic image of the lighthouse, right?
Most photographed thing in Southwest.
Most definitely, well, especially within 20 miles.
Exactly.
But for me, I have no interest in doing that because I know I'm not very good at it.
Right.
Like, making a single image has never been something I'm very good at with regards to outside of maybe extreme sports where I started with BMX, because there isn't really sequencing. There's
no way you can do it.
It's one moment where the person's spinning the bars, so you have to get very good at making that single one shot. But if I went outside tomorrow with my camera and went, I want to make one really strong image, I won't be able to fucking do that, because I know that for me as an artist, I need context. I need to build up to something. And I think that's for me why I've always struggled with potentially exhibitions, in the context of exhibitions, collective ones anyways.
I think,
they're much more about that 1 image, 2 image, 3 image impact that it makes on the wall, rather than a book. You know, I've got a small selection of books here. Like, I've got my favorite book of all time, which is Sleeping by the Mississippi.
Wow.
It's a beautiful book. By Alex Soth, my favorite photographer, if you can't tell. But like the sequencing, the layout, like there's so many levels that go into it. And by no means do I mean that exhibiting work's easy. It's not.
No.
Like,
I think I've moved, for me as a photographer, I've moved from doing exhibitions. I did like loads of exhibitions when I first started out, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the opening night, like the thrill of it.
Totally.
The fact you get so many people in to see your work. I barely got any to start with. But it's just a nice fact that you've got a physical thing on the wall, and it's great. You can open it up for a few days, get some people in, look at your work. You might get a few follows. You never do, really, but
no. Well, you'll get those people that are like, "Oh, great work, Mike. I love it."
And it's like it's a nice little confidence booster. But like you said, I've moved in the way that I make photo books now, and I make work to tell a story. And I like you said, I can do a single image, but I can't do a single image to a point where I can sell a single image. I can shoot a portrait, and that will just be like great for someone. But there's no story behind it.
No, I think that's the thing that I really struggle with as well, is the lack of story. And I see it in like the work that you make and other photographers, that they have a really strong, or at least a really good idea of the story that they're trying to tell. And I think you know, that's naturally what we're trying to do as sort of documentary based photographers is, you know, tell stories. You know, we're storytellers, but with a 100%. Camera rather than a pen.
Well, I haven't just, about 6 months ago, picked up my project on my grandmother again. And my grandfather, who's got terminal cancer, and my grandma, who's got Alzheimer's. So it's looking at the relationship between them and how they go about their day-to-day life. And I've kind of gone through the narrative of like when they first met, which is a bit cliche, but it's you need to start a story somewhere.
Totally.
And it's quite personal. I've gone really deep into their lives. I've gone from the point when my grandmother wakes up in the morning, how does she go about her day, and I've kind of gone at it in the way that she repeats herself so much now. And the fact that I've got photos together, and we're talking about how you put out a project again. You put an image next to an image.
Yeah.
And I've got images of my grandmother caring for my granddad, but she doesn't know why she's looking after him. She doesn't. Yeah. She can't remember that he's got terminal cancer. You know.
Yeah.
So it's deep, and it's
deep.
Probably the deepest project I've ever shot.
I think. Yeah, I remember you saying about this project, and I was like, "That's a deep subject matter to be jumping into."
Yeah.
Like, but it's also so beautifully poetic in a way, like, you know, your grandparents and the sort of later stages of their lives, especially. You know, it's a memory book. It's a memory book, massively.
And I know that in a way that the project, it can be either made into an exhibition or a book. It's got that kind of flexibility with it.
But would you want to? Like,
would
that's
I want
the question.
To exhibit it?
That would be my question if I was making that series. It's like, it's so intimate, and it's so...
I would do it with the goal that I'm raising awareness on the subject of Alzheimer's.
Okay,
because I think the way I've shot it, I think if you were to look at it, you would know what it's about, because I've gone for the like small details of like her diary, the fact that where she lives now, she doesn't even know where she lives. She still thinks it's her old house in London. Yeah. So I'm playing with different mediums of how can I photograph this. She's obsessed with crosswords. So the book is basically a crossword.
Interesting.
So you go through the book in the crossword in like from all her memories of her life, and you flow through it. So like, today I was here, but she's not there. Yeah. Today I did this, but she's not doing that. Yeah. And then you flip it, and it's like, today Alan was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and then she's like, and then it counteracts that with, why is he ill? But it's just trying to play. It's not playing on it.
No, it's understanding the story. Yeah. You know, like,
it's just trying to show that like they still have a relationship, even though they're both coming to the end of their life. Yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna photograph it right until the end. Yeah. I know that it's hard. I know, but I know I want to photograph it from them in the present state now. Yeah. And then when they've gone, I think.
Yeah, man. Like, it's such a deep subject matter, you know, because I think it reflects on a lot of people as well. You know, for myself, my grandma and grandpa both had Alzheimer's, and so looking at the work you're making towards your, you know, grandma and grandpa, it's like it sort of reignites something in me and like my emotion towards those people, and it's obviously a deep subject matter, but I think the intimacy that I've seen in the images that you're making, there's something that it tells me, and I think that's the thing and I think that's the thing with like with photography in general, you know, especially documentary style imagery and photojournalism, which, you know, we're both in those two realms of work. It's having that connection with the audience. And
it's also, I've shot it, but at the same time, the way I've shot it is the way I'm learning about it as well. Totally. I kind of had an idea of what it was. Yeah. But I never like properly knew what it was until I was photographing it. Yeah. And the fact that one day I know I'm going to walk into that house and I'm just going to be, who's that? Yeah. You know? Yeah. So I'm photographing it from a point of view that I'm teaching myself about this condition.
Yeah, it's almost like you're on a learning...
But I'm on a learning curve, but I'm shooting in a way, I'm going at it in a way that I'm comfortable about learning about it. Yeah,
interesting.
And she knows at the moment what I'm doing, but there comes times where she's like, why has he got a camera? Who's this guy?
Yeah, that's going to be the strange part, I suppose.
I'm gearing myself up for that in a way.
Yeah, do you think it's like it's almost your way of preparing?
Oh, like, 100%. anything. Put a camera in front of me and I'm calm as anything.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I've heard other creatives speak about their process like that as well. It's their way of dealing with whatever's going on in their lives. I just have to photograph everything. Totally.
Whilst I've got the opportunity.
So that's why, to me, it sounds like a memory document in a way.
Yeah, it will be a book.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
I think at the moment.
I think maybe not even put a title, like put any emphasis on it yet. Just make, because it sounds like you're very much in the flow of it. Yeah. Not to use like very London-esque terms, but like in the vibe of what you're trying to create and the story you're trying to make, or at least document. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's, there was I forgot the name of the project now. I read about it whilst doing Treasure Island, and it was a photographer who photographed his dad. I think I might have mentioned it to you.
You might have showed it to me, yeah.
Yeah, and he photographed his dad like at the later part of his life. His dad was like an actor and all of these things. It was really interesting, really intimate project. And it was, as the viewer, as myself picking up that book, it almost felt like the photographer had given me the okay to see this.
But the way I want to do it, and I, exactly like you say, I want to do it as in I show someone the project and they step inside that house. I want them to physically feel like they've gone into that house. So like you're standing at a doorway, door opens. Bam.
Yeah, it's nice.
And I want there to be, it sounds really bad, I want there to be emotion.
Of course. Well, there's naturally going to be emotion.
There's always going to be, but I want it to be like, I don't want it to be like cliche, but I want it to be like, you're not expecting every time you turn the page it's something different.
Yeah, totally.
Because in the way that the condition goes, it's different. It's progressive,
Yeah,
it changes as you go,
Yeah, definitely. And I think that will show in the work that you're making anyways. And it's like,
it's black and white.
Cool. Film or digital?
Digital.
Shoot some rolls on that RB, bro. No, I don't know if you would agree, but I think there's in photography, especially like documentary stuff, it's like there's almost this I feel personally that there's almost like this stigma where we have to oversell our work before we've even finished it, in the context of like, because we're almost seeking approval, which we are as artists naturally, we're always seeking approval,
of course.
But we're also trying to seek, potentially financial arrangements to sell the work or whatever it might be, exhibitions, etc. And I think that's natural, very natural, as any artist would be in that situation. Yeah. But for myself, I found myself starting to pull back a little bit from that, from this idea of I've got to make work that sells. I've got to make a book. I have to make this. Like, I think I'm trying to recalibrate myself as an artist and my understanding of why I'm making work, rather than to please, 100%. Whoever it might be, to sell a book.
I'm creating, like you said, I'm creating work not to sell it.
Yeah,
at the moment.
Totally.
I'm creating work for my personal gain.
Well, your personal growth
as well.
Yeah, it's definite growth in there. Like the fact that you're going through this range of emotions, with your elderly relatives.
The fact that I can't shoot at the moment during lockdown is a blessing, because it gives me time to reflect on when I go back in, what's it going to be like? Yeah,
and also it gives you time to look at what you've made and think, is this kind of what I'm trying to create, what I'm trying to tell? It gives you that distance, reflection. That time, and the reflection. Yeah, most definitely. And I think that is a key thing in not even just art, in general life, and like having that time to reflect.
That's the thing that I was worried about, is that because I literally 20 minutes down the road, I can go there and shoot any day at the moment. Yeah. Predominantly weekends is ideal for me, because it's just, you get 2 days just to be constantly focused on what you want. But I don't want to burn myself out. No. So that's why it's nice to take a break. Yeah. Reflect on the work that I've created. Yeah, totally. What can I do better? Yeah. Get people's opinions like yourself. Yeah. I don't be afraid to show your work, because that's one thing that I was, and now I'm not. So.
Yeah, and I think that's going full circle back to the education thing. It's like,
we've done it.
I think that's the thing, is like the argument that I had with my friend about education in the art world, I think I said to him, excuse me, I said to them that one of the biggest things that you gain from doing a BA, A-level, whatever, is you learn how to show your work. You learn how to talk about your work. You learn how to be in a forum of creative input.
And on the first day, I remember at UOG, we just got chucked straight in the deep end.
Of course.
And it was like, stand up, talk about this for 20 minutes or something. And I was like, but then I was fine. Like, you get used to it, don't you? Like, it's a nice thing to do at the end of the day. You've got to be proud with what you create. Like, if you're not proud to create, don't show it.
No, totally. I totally agree. And I think, like, it's interesting because I sort of I remember us like starting to get more like friendly when we both lived in Cheltenham and talking about like our work, etc. And it kind of developed off into starting like Coverless together, which was you know, our like publishing. I don't even know if we put like an actual tag to it. So like publishing zines, exhibitions, etc. But I think that's the thing, is like, you're naturally, I don't know if you find it the same, but when you meet another creative that you click with, you naturally want to start working with that person 100%. A lot more. You know what I mean? And so when that started happening between you and I, and then starting Coverless, which by no means was it considered like wildly successful, but we saw, you know, the platform that we were trying to create
100%.
definitely had interest in other people.
100%.
And I think something like collectives, and I speak very lightly of collectives now because there is so many of them. There's so many collectives. A saturated market. Definitely. Well, it's not even necessarily a saturated market. It's almost like it's become the norm. And I know that I agree. You know, the Brickworks, we have a collective. Yeah. Of course.
But that's like the fact that Coverless is still there. We can still do stuff with it, but we've just taken a break. We've taken a break from it because we were always looking at it. And the fact that we can go back to it whenever we want, like, it's still there. I'm still going to use it. You can still use it when you want.
Of course,
we can just chip in when we want.
Yeah, man. And I think that's the thing, is like the ideology we had about with Coverless was like to create this collective.
And the fact that it went through stages before it got to that.
Oh yeah, like
it's developing it.
Yeah, totally. I think like looking at how it got to where it is now, although we're not necessarily using it or utilizing it right this second, it's very interesting because I think like there's almost this like goes back to what we were saying about like the need to show work. I think that's why there's so many different collectives on social media now. You know, and that's, I'm not saying that because I think they're bad. I don't by any means. I think that they're very, there's lots of them, and like the importance, like the importance of a creative collective is kind of being neglected in a way. It's
I just haven't used like social media. I haven't posted for ages.
Really?
Yeah.
Why does every creative I talk to at the moment, even myself, taking time from social media? Do you reckon it's just the lockdown?
Boring. It's so boring. Like, why do I have to constantly keep pleasing people? I've just realised I don't need to keep pleasing everyone by posting photos every day. That sounds ranty now.
No, definitely.
But you know, like it's just draining. Because I guess in lockdown we just sit there constantly scrolling through our phones, and when I went before lockdown, we just go about shooting stuff, and then it would be nice to upload and you have a reason to show your work again, and it's showing your work. But at the moment
I think so. You know, I had this conversation with Rianne on the podcast last week. I think social media, it's become this, it's just become a fucking ad agency. You know, especially like Instagram, and it's like completely lost what made it really interesting and cool 5 years ago or whatever. But it's natural, you know, it's gonna become that. And I think that's, especially as photographers, and I know we said this a little bit earlier, but I think that's why it's so important to print your own work, because it's so easy, as you were saying, in the digital age, to go out and shoot, edit, and then put it on Instagram all in one day. Like, you can do that quite easily.
100%.
But by doing that, you're completely missing the time to reflect on the images you've made. the story that you're telling. You could be fully focused on a subject matter, go out and make an image, come back, edit, post it. But I guarantee within a few days you'll look at that post and think, fuck, why
I could have a whole conversation about that. We could do a part 2. It's literally, I think you're right. I think you've got to be aware of why you're doing it. And I mean, I do love seeing people just like shoot and upload, and it's nice, it's refreshing.
Totally.
But it's nice to know why they're shooting, like what's the story behind it.
It's fast media, isn't it?
And there's some sick photographers coming out right now.
Oh mate, there's
from
tons.
Lockdown.
There is tons. Like there's I forgot his name now, a guy that I've been really following his work up in Cheltenham. I think Luke Watson, potentially. Liam Watson. I can't remember off the top of my head.
He's a nice guy.
But yeah, so like, I think social media, man, it's one of those things, especially as a photographer, that people will just say to you, "Oh, just go on Flickr." Fuck Flickr. Like,
those are the days.
Like, don't get me wrong, Flickr was great in 2008. And like, I think it's platforms, man, and it's natural that everywhere is becoming somewhat saturated with imagery. Like, I can't remember the statistic, but Instagram was saying, I think it's a million pictures are uploaded per minute or something, like something
and the fact
bananas.
An egg.
It's still the most liked picture on Instagram.
Why am I here? You know?
But then that's an interesting thing to say. Like, why am I here? Because that's a question that I ask myself with social media. Is like, am I devaluing my work by putting it on social media? Like me and a friend of mine, Jake Beckett. We had a conversation. I think it was on the previous podcast I did back in the first lockdown about how social media, it kind of devalues your artwork. Like by rushing to put it on social media, 100%. You're devaluing the time, the energy, the money that you've put in to create that picture, and or whatever it is. And it's like, there's almost this like reliance where we feel like we have to put stuff up on Facebook and social media as photographers.
And I think you're right, and that's one of the reasons why I started to go into film, because I was slowing that process down. I wasn't constantly like burst shutter. I was like taking my time. I had 12 shots, and I knew each shot had to tell a story. And I feel like with like social media, I don't like talking about social media really, but you're constantly always really fastly flicking.
It's flicks, mate. It's just constantly,
like, and I just like to slow the process down, take time to consider what you're doing, and knowing that if you don't get the right shot, then you can always go back. But it's nice knowing that I'm shooting for a purpose. I'm not shooting to shoot, you know. And
do you think that's why you shoot a lot? Well, have shot a lot of film over the years?
I'd say.
Yeah. I think it's the same for me. Like, rediscovering that slower format.
And I remember clearly, actually, one of my tutors told me at uni, we had a module, I think I said this in the last podcast, but we had to go to a gypsy fair in Gloucester somewhere. And we were shooting it for a newspaper. And that, to me, there and then, that day, told me that I don't want to be a press photographer. Well, I'm not that I don't want to be a press photographer.
But you kind of do it at the same time.
But I kind of do it at the same time because I love the thrill of it. But at the same time, I don't love the speed of it.
It's
because it's like you're there, you've got half an hour to get that shot, edit, and sent to a paper. And I didn't like that. I like the idea that I could take my time with the project.
I think that's really interesting because to whoever's sort of listening or watching, but you studied PJD, didn't you, at UOG?
Yeah, so photojournalism and documentary photography.
I hate that.
Really?
Let me explain. Apologies to anyone that disagrees, but I'm about to go in. I think photojournalism and documentary photography are different.
Oh, they're different entities, yeah.
Do not think they should be taught together.
No.
I think there's definitely crossover, the same that there's crossover in all of the art world. There's crossover between fine art, painting, street art. There's crossover. But the approaches are drastically different. The approach in documentary photography, and I'm not a fan of boxes by any means. I don't like to put myself in a box as an artist. But when it comes to teaching and or learning a new genre,
Yeah.
The idea of combining two genres that don't really work together and then slamming them together to make a course doesn't make any sense.
But then I could counter that and say that I think it was good in the way that it told you, it taught you in the way that you know which way you want to go. You learn two different approaches.
It's almost enlightening in a way.
You either go this way or you either go that way.
Yeah.
There are slight like similarities.
Yeah, there's definite crossover.
There's crossovers in the way that you can like tell a story. There's always even in documentary and photojournalism, there's stories.
Yeah.
But in the way that you've got the legality of one of them, whereas the other one, you know, it's much more slow. So I think, I wouldn't have. I is a great course. Don't get me wrong. And if anyone was going to uni and wants to do a good course, I would 100%. Like I set this guy up.
Gave me the plug.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's really interesting because there's only one photographer that I know of, off the top of my head, that works. Is almost genre bending in his approach to work, which is Rob Hornstra. And it's photojournalism, but in a much slower and thought-provoking manner. So he literally calls it slow journalism.
Is that like the Sochi?
The Sochi project. Yeah, he's done like 101 Billionaires. Great photographer.
Right.
I wish I could afford his books. They're far too expensive. But I remember doing my BA and doing a presentation about sort of the difference between documentary photography and photojournalism. And towards the end of that presentation, I started talking about Rob Hornstra.
Oh, you did the differences?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a long presentation. Almost as long as my podcast.
That's cool, though.
It's all good. It's all good, bro. And I remember coming to the end of this presentation, that's when I started speaking about slow journalism. Yeah. And my lecturer at the time, Dan Bosworth.
Oh, I know. He taught me.
Yeah. Cracking bloke, really nice guy. I'd like to meet him again at some point.
Dan, if you're listening.
Yeah, shout out Dan Bosworth. We had a bit of an argument,
really,
if I remember right off the top of my head, that he told, he was saying that slow journalism is just journalism for people that want to take their time. And I said, true, but it's also more thought-provoking in the fact that you're taking your time to think about your subject matter.
Yeah.
And it ended up becoming this kind of running theme between mine and his conversations, because I was always battling this idea of being a documentary photographer, or at least approaching my work in that manner, and then wanting to produce stuff quickly and putting it out quickly, because we're
Did
in a
you ever
social
go
media
down
age.
the route of photojournalism?
I've done a little bit of it.
Yeah,
I've done bits and bobs of it. I worked as a freelance sort of photojournalist for local newspapers for a while. So I ended up photographing like car accidents and stuff like that, which was always weird. I've always found that like a really weird thing to photograph. Yeah, man. Wow. I remember photographing not far from my house, actually, somebody's house caught on fire in the middle of the night.
Right.
And at the time, I got a phone call to say that they needed photographs.
Yeah.
And this was like 5 years ago, before I went off and did my master's. And I was like, cool. And I ran down there because it was literally 10 minutes from my house. So I didn't even get in the car. I just ran with my gear. This is quite late at night. Right. I think I was wearing fucking dressing gown, no doubt, or whatever. But I remember getting there. Excuse me.
That's all right.
I remember getting there and starting to make images.
Yeah.
And I think probably the son or whatever, like the son of the homeowner,
right? Yeah,
not the newspaper, came running over to me, and he was like, "The fuck you doing? Why the fuck are you here taking pictures of my fucking? It's my fucking."
But that's the thing with it, isn't it? You that comes with the style that you want to do.
Definitely, and sort of that incident came a week after me photographing somebody who was hit by a car and sadly passed away.
Right.
And it was in that moment, like that sort of week period where I had those two incidences where I sort of made the decision in myself. I was like, fuck this. I don't want to do this sort of work anymore.
So that was kind of the...
like, and this isn't isn't that I don't appreciate people that make work like that by any means. Like, I do, because that work needs to be made, and there's some fantastic photographers that create work in those environments. But for me personally, I'm not a conflict sort of person. I've never enjoyed conflict. I never will enjoy conflict. No. I'd much rather have a coffee and relax. But yeah, those two moments, those two incidences made me realise, like, I don't want to be this guy that people shout at for taking pictures. When I first
started out, I wanted to be a conflict photographer.
Really? Yeah. I think a lot of people do that.
And I was like, that's going to be so cool.
Yeah.
And then I was like, maybe not.
No.
And then I knew then that I would go on to do documentary. And it's great, like meeting yourself with your projects and being able to help you with your book and curating it, and to meet other photographers, well-established photographers and not so well-established photographers.
Totally.
Everyone's in the same bubble, you know. No one's.
Yeah.
It's not the industry is portrayed as in on top dog, you know.
Yeah, I think there's naturally an element of that, especially in the commercial world. Yeah. Like, there's always, as soon as you start to introduce money and clientele.
I remember being at an exhibition. I'm not going to say who it was, but I remember they came up to me. I think it was a few months ago, and they were like, "Oh, my commercial work is so much more valuable than this."
Yeah.
And it was like,
fuck you, bro.
Like, I'm not a horrible person. I'm like, that's great. Like, you go and do what you do, but this is what I do and this is what I enjoy.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's differences, but I think there's always a way forward for everyone. You know, either if you do commercial or documentary. I've done both. I'm just going to be going into commercial now.
Yeah, definitely. So, and I think that's the thing, is it's finding that balance, isn't it? I think that, like, it's very easy to, you know, put yourselves in those boxes, and I think like it's natural to do that because it's almost human nature to put yourself in a position where you exactly know what you're doing, etc., rather than the complete unknown. And it's interesting to see yourself, like, obviously transitioning now into taking a bit of a break from documentary work and the fantastic project you're doing with your grandparents. And I know that you're starting your new job soon, aren't you? Yeah. Which is kind of cool that you're going to be going down that kind of road scary, as such.
So I'm going into full-time photographing cars for sales.
Cool.
In a way that I was like, oh, that's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it, you know. There's something different, and that's what I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah.
I'm still doing photography, and I'm able to help a company grow and give what I know from a commercial aspect now. And I still haven't graduated yet either.
No, neither have I.
Technically.
No, I still haven't got my. Oh no, I do have the piece of paper with my grades on.
And that's another thing that's. I know that I've completed one stage now and I'm moving on to the next.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to do my documentary stuff when I've got my own time, you know? I'm always going to be doing something related, photography related.
I think it's finding that balance, isn't it? Like that really fine balance between continuing to work creatively and getting paid, making a living. Like, you know, coming straight out of BA, even MA, it's like, it's hard. Like the creative industry, especially now, is so fucking hard. Like there's nearly no work, like, you know, client work or anything. It's all dried up. I don't know.
My first COVID wedding on a weekend.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
The family were lovely.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how the restrictions is. I had to stand in a corner and I wasn't able to move anywhere.
That must be hard to make different images from that position.
Yeah, and I couldn't. I was like, I'm really sorry, but I'm not going to be able to like make a story out of this. You know, I always go into it trying to tell a story of the day.
Yeah.
Had half an hour with it. It had one of those, you know, the COVID things you see in supermarkets.
Yeah.
It was 2 footprints. And it said, stand here, photographer. So I was stood there. I have both cameras, all my lenses all set up, ready to go. I was thinking, I'm going to be able to move around here if I'm staying at a 2 meter distance. And they were like, no, you can't. So I had to kind of it's thinking on the spot. And I think I got 20 minutes until they go into the registry office. How am I going to be able to get photos?
Make a good image, I
was like, we're going to have to go for a walk around Bristol somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
Yeah.
And we got photos, you know?
Yeah.
There's always a way to overcome
the adversity that you face
and the challenges that you're going to face. You've just got to be able to think logically and sensibly, whilst still considering your health and safety, of course.
Yeah, of course. I think especially in this day and age, not to go down the COVID road. Yeah, I haven't done, for me personally, I haven't done many shoots during, like with people anyway.
No,
it's
I
like
think
a lot
that was
of
the
the
only
stuff
one I've done, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that I've been making has been very much like isolated and by myself or whatever, you know, which is basically me as a person. But
and me.
deep. But yeah, no, I remember seeing the images and thinking like, oh, that's interesting. A wedding during COVID. Like, there's even a story just in the fact of doing that. That was my first
COVID wedding as well.
Yeah, I love how it's the COVID wedding. You know what I mean? Like, I've really started getting back into, like, when I was doing my masters, I got into like anthropology and all of those things. Like, to do with like the emic and the etic and the idea of the inside or the outside. Anyways, I've started getting back into like that kind of thinking again recently. So like, I went to Avonmouth the other morning. If anyone's ever been
I saw you did. Yeah.
And just walking around like at 6:30 on a Wednesday morning, beautiful sunrise. I still need to get the film developed, but I was walking around in like a pair of Doc Martens, suit trousers, a turtleneck, and like a blazer because I had meetings later that day, right? But I wanted to go shoot, and there's something coming from this. And as I was walking around, Avonmouth, obviously, as yourself knows, but whoever's listening, is a huge industrial estate. Basically, it's a port. It's a massive port just outside of Bristol, which is now tier 3 without me knowing. So that was good times.
Goodness.
And I was walking around, and I started feeling like it felt like I had eyes in the back of my head, and I think this goes back to like the anthropology idea. I was walking around, I was making images, and I was thinking, what the fuck am I telling right now? Am I just making pretty pictures, or am I actually trying to tell a story? So I started, looking at like the difference between, because in Avonmouth there's the huge like wind turbines in the distance, and then you've got all of the old 1960s 1940s like buildings, the warehouses. So I started trying to like compose imagery around the two, and so it's all about building that story. And I think a lot of the building of a story, and by the sounds of things for yourself as well doing the wedding, comes from being in the moment, being in that moment 100%. And trying to figure out where you're going and what you're doing. 100%. And I found that because I looked abnormal in that moment, being in a huge and dirty sort of industrial estate, wearing meeting clothes, walking around with a big ass camera on a tripod, it naturally forced my mind to be more curious, like just genuinely being in those positions. And I found that this lockdown and this whole, even most of this year bar up to March, has been really difficult to keep curiosity, because you ended up exploring your local area, which you could be very curious about, of course.
I found some really nice places that I have never heard about before.
Most definitely. But then you can also end up walking the same routes and doing the same things. And I think there's almost like...
But do you enjoy that?
I was just about to say, I think, no, it's all good. I think I was talking to another friend of mine, I sound like Donald Trump now, a friend of mine, about repetition in the art world. So looking at like Andy Warhol, is it Warhol? Andy Warhol, and like some of these other artists that use repetition. And I was, because I basically walk the same route back and forth from the studio to my house, basically. And I've started making images along that walk every morning, every evening. Obviously it's wintertime, so it's dark both ways and cold. But like the repetition of it starting to show new perspectives in my mind, and the difference in the light and the difference in the the cars on the road, and that face mask trash, what's that doing? That repetition.
It's like that who's that documentary photographer? She photographs like litter on the street.
Oh shit,
Chloe Juno.
I think so.
That is really interesting, and I never really thought of it that. But that's repetition. You're photographing the same thing all the time, but it's interesting in the way that each object within that frame is different.
Definitely, it's and the idea of repetition as well, I think, is quite interesting. Like, in the context of, for most other things in life, say you go to the gym, repetition of going to the gym equals growth. You get healthier, etc. Repetition of work, you become more productive, you learn quicker, etc., etc.
100%.
But then repetition in the art world is also almost deemed as like you shouldn't do that, or it's quite niche, only some people do repetition. And it's really really interesting to see that correlation I found. And I think that's the thing that I'm trying to learn as an artist right now, is go a bit deeper with my thought process of producing, like, because, and this isn't to sound arrogant or anything, but I know I can make okay photographs and I can put together a book or a zine and it looks kind of cool. But what am I doing behind that? That's the question I'm asking myself now. And I think that came from anthropology and all of these things, from doing Treasure Island. Connection. Definitely. So now I'm trying to think deeper. So like the idea of repetition, it's like, okay, so what is repetition? How does it react in our daily lives? And all of those things.
I think repetition's a hard one as well, because I think when I was creating photo books, that's the one thing that I realised there was a lot of repetition. And I don't like, I like repetition, but I think sometimes there's a need for it and sometimes there's not a need for it.
Totally.
And I was creating work that was repeating itself quite a lot. And I was like, I need to cut down on the repetition. But then it's that ball game, like, do you include it? Do you take it out? And that's the one thing that I think you can really learn from, is repetition. I think that's the one thing that will change the way you look at things. Totally,
man, totally. So I think we're coming up to the nearly 2 hour mark. No, about an hour and a half in. So
jeez, really?
Wow. Nice long podcast. So to anyone that's listening or watching, where can people find your work?
So
all of those things.
Instagram is just Mike Butt Photo, and I have a website, so that's www.mikebuttphoto.com. I think that's all of the places. That's all the places you can find
man. No, that's all good. It's all good.
Thank you, my guy.
Nah, that's all good. So if you guys want to check out Mike's work, go down to the link below, or if you're listening to this on Spotify, go into the description and have a look. No, I appreciate you coming on, man, and having a good chat. I feel like there's so many things that we need to continue. Yeah, we do, bro.
New year.
New year, new podcast, brother. That sounds good. No, well, I hope everything goes well with your project, man, and with the new job especially.
Really
that's going to be a good one, having that nice consistent income.
And in the fact that I can keep creating.
Totally. Totally agree, man. But thank you for listening and or watching, guys. And
thank you, guys.
Be safe out there.